Before we get started in today's video, I just wanted to put a little warning out there. I'm sure you've read the title, but this video will have the topic of miscarriages. That can be quite a sensitive topic, so if you don't think you're ready to watch a video in regards to that topic, I have a lot more uplifting, positive videos on my channel, and you can watch those instead. In case you're new to this channel, hi, my name is Jasmine and welcome back or welcome to my channel. If you are into the supernatural, energy healing, and spiritual growth, this is definitely the channel for you. So make sure you give this video a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, and turn on that notification bell if you want to get notified when I upload my next video, and continue watching. The holiday season is a very joyous time for many people in the world, but also the holiday season can bring up a lot of emotions. You might be thinking about loved ones that passed away, you might be stressed out about the financial burden of the holiday season, or you might be grieving little ones that you have lost, that you never actually had a chance to meet. And yes, I'm talking about miscarriages and grieving the child that you never met during the holiday season. It can definitely bring up those emotions. So in today's video, I will be sharing with you my personal story with my personal miscarriage, along with emotions that you might be feeling, just to let you know that I'm going through them too. It's okay to grieve, and also how the grieving process can look, and tips and tricks to help you with the grieving process that you might not find on the internet. And if you are watching this video and you haven't had a miscarriage or anything like that, it's still worthwhile watching, because the emotional release and the grieving process with any loss will be applicable with these tips and tricks, okay? Also, before we get started, I just wanted to say that sometimes with miscarriages, it can be a tricky subject because you're grieving a loss that a person that you've never actually got to meet. And sometimes when you go through a loss like that, you almost feel like you can't grieve it because you're being too emotional, because you've never actually met your baby. And I'm here to tell you that it is okay to grieve the loss, and if anybody tells you otherwise, that's not okay, because you connected to your baby at a soul level, and they were a part of you, and it's a loss. They were a part of you. I might get emotional during this video. I already have. I wasn't planning on getting emotional this early on in it, but yeah, I'm here to share my story, my journey, in hopes that it will help you in your journey and in your life, and be connected. Okay, so the facts. 15 to 20% of pregnancies can result into a miscarriage. And if that's the case, why is it not talked about? Because chances are either you yourself or somebody that you care about has gone through a miscarriage. So with that being said, that's one of the main reasons why I've been pulled to make this video, because I personally find that the holiday season has been tough on me, and it's been making me really kind of face what I went through. And I think that by sharing and having an open communication and not just showing the spiritual kind of fluff, you try to always be a positive person, but the truth is not everything in our life is sunshine and rainbows. And I want to show you guys kind of everything, so then like, because I'm human, we're all human, we all go through things, and it's okay to be able to talk about it and not feel guilty about it, because you don't know who you are going to affect in a positive way when you talk about your own story, your own journey, and your own hardships. It helps people feel less alone. So I'm going to start off by sharing my story through miscarriage and the emotions that are involved with that, along with ways to help you get through the grieving process that you might not find on the internet. So I'll kind of start at the beginning. So when I was like a teenager, 14 years old, I had pretty bad acne. So I was put on a hormonal birth control pill to help with my acne. Ever since like a young age, my period was always regular because I was on the birth control pill. And then fast forward to when I was leaving high school, I went through this phase where I'm like, I don't want to be on any medication. I'm going to like stop this. So I stopped it. And it took me a while to get my cycle back. And when I was looking online to see if that was normal, it's perfectly normal that when you stop like a birth control pill, that it might take a little bit for you to get back on track, because your body is now like trying to do it themselves as opposed to being like tricked into being pregnant. So I wasn't too worried, but as university went on, my periods were getting super irregular. I'm talking about like every 3 to 4 months. So I was only getting them like 3 to 5 times a year. So I went to a walk-in clinic and told them what I was going through, all my symptoms, and they said that I had polycystic ovarian syndrome, PCOS, and they recommended to put me back on the birth control pill because it would help alleviate any of the symptoms, including irregular menstrual cycle. So I was like, okay, I'll go back on it. And basically it's just like putting a band-aid on whatever it is that's going on in your body, because you're just on the pill to help stop the symptoms, and my main symptom was irregular periods. So yeah, and sorry if you are guys watching, but this is part of life. And yeah, so I went back on it, and when the doctor put me on the birth control pill again, he mentioned that with polycystic ovarian syndrome, it can be harder to get pregnant. And the main reason he was saying was because your menstrual cycle is so irregular that you don't know when you're ovulating. So, and also if you think about like a normal menstrual cycle, it's once a month. So then like those people have 12 times in the year that they could try to get pregnant, whereas if you're only getting your period every 3 to 4 months, that's significantly less times. So the odds are less in your favor. And when I was in my late teens, early 20s, I wasn't really thinking at all about becoming pregnant. Like that was completely not on my mind, but it was always in the back of my mind that like when the time did come that like I'd want to start a family, what if I can't get pregnant? What if I can't have kids? So that was always a fear of mine. So fast forward a bit to when I was 26, they discontinued my birth control pills. So I tried a different type. That pill gave me so many awful side effects that once again, I decided that I was going to stop hormonal birth control and check my cycle and do like healthy eating and attempt to exercise more and just try to get everything on track the natural way. It was actually crazy because I, for the first time in my life, was regular without having to take pills. So I was tracking my cycle and all that stuff, and I was very on the clock. So when my period became late, I was kind of confused, but also like, well, I had polycystic ovarian syndrome back in the day, so maybe that's why. But also I just took a pregnancy test just to be on the safe side. I was pregnant. And my fiance Jordan and I, we were a lot of different emotions at that time because we were not planning on getting pregnant. It was a complete surprise. So we were super shocked, but also like, how did this happen? What's going on? We weren't planning on this. And just like so many roller coasters of emotions were going through our mind when we first found out. But then once the initial like, oh my God happened, like wore off, we were really excited. Uh, Within hours, all of my ads on my phone, my computer, everything was having to do with like baby clothes, cribs, strollers, everything to do with babies. That's how much like I was researching it and excited. And it felt like just as quick as we found out I was pregnant and excited about it, I started to bleed and have pain. So we went to the hospital and they did like blood work and they did like an exam and stuff, an ultrasound to see if it was a viable pregnancy. And the ultrasound did show something, and then also they did some blood tests to see what like your beta HCG levels are. And so they had like the marker of when I went into the hospital, and I had to come 2 days later to see what the levels were. And basically, if they continued to go up, we're good. I'm still pregnant. But if they drop significantly, then most likely, like I had a miscarriage. So when we went to go do the follow-up appointment, we were told the awful news that I miscarried. And for me, immediately I went into nurse mode. I call it nurse mode because I work in the emergency department and we can see awful things, and it's just easy to like compartmentalize your feelings and not feel them in the moment, because if you are stressed or going through something emotionally, you don't make like the best decisions because you're like stressed, scared, or whatever. So if you just kind of like go into nurse mode, then you're good. You can think clearly and rationally. But after nurse mode went away, I started blaming myself, thinking about like when I had a glass of wine or something at dinner before I knew I was pregnant, and just blaming myself for doing that and telling myself that if I didn't have that glass of wine, then I would still be pregnant and it's all my fault. And I must say, I'm pretty good at blaming myself. And Jordan would be like always telling me that it's not my fault, and he's always so supportive. But the truth is, like, I kept blaming myself. But if you look at the facts, 15 to 20% of miscarriages, or 15 to 20% of pregnancies lead to miscarriages. And that's coming from the Stanford's Children's Health website. But let's be real. Statistics mean nothing when you're going through a loss like this. Nothing. Like, they don't mean anything. Like, you're going through something traumatic. So, to me, it didn't feel reassuring to know that 15 to 20% of other women are going through the same thing. Like, if anything, that made me think, like, okay, well, what about the other 80 or 85% of women? Like, why can't I be like that? Now that you heard my miscarriage story, let's talk about the emotions and then the grieving aspect of a loss like this. So there's so many different emotions that you could be going through, and keep in mind that grieving, that process is not linear at all. Like, you can have your ups, your downs, highs, lows. You could take 5 steps forward in your grieving process and then just go right back down to square one. Like, there is no right or wrong way to grieve. It's just doing what's best for you and knowing that it's not linear. So when you regress, it's not a setback, it's just a part of the process. One emotion that you might feel is numb. You might not feel anything or allow yourself to feel anything. You might be in that term that I coined, nurse mode, because feeling nothing is better than feeling the significance of the loss, and it is a significant loss, and it's too great for you to deal with right now. And that is okay. Like, that's our body's coping mechanism to protect you. And compartmentalizing the emotions that go with it and just suppressing them. This is definitely not the most healthy way to cope because you're not dealing with anything or allowing yourself to feel the emotions. But sometimes not feeling anything or feeling numb is what you need at that moment. It's just as long as you don't stay in this process of emotions, because it's not healthy. You're not actually dealing with anything, but sometimes it is vital and crucial to be numb. Another emotion is you might be angry, just mad at the world. Like, why did this happen to me? And like, it's just not fair. For me, I also felt like I was angry because I felt like my body failed me. Like, as a woman, you're supposed to be able to have children and all this different stuff. And I felt so happy that I was pregnant and like so grateful, and I was just so excited because in the back of my mind, as I mentioned earlier, I felt like maybe children weren't in the cards for me. So the fact that I got pregnant and lost the baby, I just felt like my body failed me. And I was really mad at myself. And you might be feeling that way too. Yeah, I just felt so mad. At myself, at my body. I just felt like a failure. And Jordan was always so sad when he saw me blaming myself, because he'd always tell me it's not my fault, and he's so supportive. But just because he says that doesn't mean that's not how I feel on the inside. But I've definitely been working through those emotions and anger. And I know now that like everything happens for a reason. You might not know the reason why the bad things are happening right now, but there is always a bigger picture, and you might not know why you had this loss right now, but you will one day. And the things we go through make us stronger, and maybe by you going through this, you're able to help other people who are also going through this. Another emotion that you might be going through is guilt. I went through this emotion a lot and asked myself a lot of the same questions that I did when I was angry. Like, what did I do wrong? It's my fault. I had that. If I hadn't have had that glass of wine, maybe it would be a different story. But the truth is, like, it's not your fault. And there's nothing that you could have done or not have done to have changed what happened. And, like, a majority of the miscarriages happen in the first 12 weeks. Maybe the baby wasn't growing like it should have. And that wouldn't have been a good life for that child. And just be aware that it is not your fault. And even though you may be feeling guilty and placing the blame on yourself, eventually you'll come to the realization that it wasn't your fault. And what's meant to be is meant to be. And just because you miscarried now doesn't mean you're going to miscarry in the future. And eventually when you do have kids, maybe you'll appreciate it that much more. Other emotions are sad and depressed. Those are perfectly valid emotions because you lost a significant person in your life. Even though you did not meet that person, doesn't make the loss any less significant. Having a child is life-changing. And literally visualizing what your life would be like, being excited and like looking at cribs, looking at clothes, and figure out where in your house you're going to put those things, and then for that to be like taken away from you is traumatizing. And even like, I know I kind of got a glimpse into my future, like Jordan would, before he'd kiss me, he'd kiss my tummy. And like, I found that to be like super hard to deal with when that wasn't happening anymore. Yeah, it's absolutely crushing. Another emotion you might be feeling is distancing yourself off from people, not allowing people to be there for you or to even let them in and know what you're going through. And that's because like it's hard to even like say it. And when you say what you went through and like what happened, like it makes it real. So I know that I push people away, and you might be too. But the thing is, your loved ones in your life, they care about you and they want to be there for you, and by not allowing them to be in your life in those moments, it's a disservice to you and to them. Because you are not a burden. You're going through something super significant, and people want to be there for you. Another emotion is feeling okay again. Like when you start to get your life back and be able to do things that you love to do and not feel guilty about it. And like a sense of normalcy. And also with that being said, like I mentioned earlier that grief is not linear. So you could be at the okay stage and then all of a sudden your emotions come hitting you like you ran into a brick wall and got the wind knocked out of you. And that's okay too. I'm sure I missed some other emotions, but those are the gist of some of the main emotions. And yeah, let's get into how to cope with the grief. My first piece of advice is to actually allow yourself to feel the emotions. As they come, allow them to flow out of you. Don't be afraid to cry. Don't be afraid to be angry. Don't be afraid to just like want to be a couch potato for a bit. It is okay to feel the feels. And actually, by allowing the emotion, the emotional trauma, the release of those emotions by crying it out, yelling, or whatever it is you need to do, that's actually allowing you to not have that emotional trauma stuck in your body. And you're actually allowing the energy to move out. And yeah, releasing that emotional trauma that could eventually lead into like physical pain and stuff. Another way is to also check in with your partner, see how he or she is doing, and also like talking to each other about how you're feeling. It can be hard to hear and hard to express, but you are both going through a significant loss, and it's important to keep the line of communication open and to let each other in, because nobody knows what you are going through more than your partner does. So don't block them out. Another thing you can do to help with the grieving process is to actually take time for yourself. Do the things that you love, or read a book, or like do nothing, or go for a walk. Just do something that allows you to have you time, and prioritize that, because you are important and you need to be able to get yourself back. So take time for yourself, and that will help you be able to do that. Another tip I have to help coping with the grieving process, it might seem like a weird one, but dance. And I'm not talking about like turning on some like dance music and like jumping around, that type of dancing. I'm talking about like holding your stomach and like moving your hips and just like feeling all of the emotions and allowing yourself to come to terms with what happened. And sometimes like when you're like moving your hips and like holding your stomach, it can help you release the emotions that you have bottled up, and not let that like stuck stagnant energy like stay there, and just like allow yourself to release the emotions through crying or whatever, dancing, movement. And to just, it's a way for you to also connect with what could have been, and then being okay with what has happened. Another tip is cut yourself some slack. Don't be too hard on yourself. It's not your fault what happened, and the grieving process, I don't think anybody could ever fully get over losing a child, losing a pregnancy, that type of thing. So don't feel like you're a burden. Don't feel like because X amount of time has already passed that you're not worth being able to feel the emotions, because the truth is, during the holiday season, it's a time that brings up like old emotions that you may have thought you've already worked with, or losses that you already felt like you worked with, whether that's a loved one, a child, a miscarriage. And it's okay. It's okay to be sad. It's okay not to be okay. And also, I've mentioned this already, but grieving is not linear. It's not like you're climbing a staircase. You can have your highs and your lows and everything in between, and you could have like some really good days or weeks or months, and then all of a sudden some bad ones, and that is okay. Also, you could seek out support from other people that went through the same thing that you have, but also ended up having a positive result. So There's support groups out there where women have had miscarriages, but they've also gone on to have healthy pregnancies, and that will help you, one, not feel alone in what you're going through, but also allow you to like look into the future and have hope, because they went through the same thing you're going through right now, but they were actually able to have a child and look on the other side, and that can also help bring comfort. Another tip for you is to not rush into getting pregnant again right away, because you need to have time to be able to come with terms with your loss and be able to grieve that fully. But if you rush to try to get pregnant again and like you haven't gone through everything that you need to go through emotionally, and there might be a lot of like fear, guilt, things going into that, and you don't need to get pregnant just for the sake of getting pregnant, because you might be missing that feeling that you had. I know I did. But it's important to take time for you and to be able to grieve what happened and not just be so consumed with the idea of being pregnant. Just allow yourself to be able to process those emotions, you and your partner, and you'll know when the time is right. I know this topic may have been quite heavy. I know it was a lot to do in this video also, but I think it's a super important topic to talk about, because like I said, a bunch of people go through this, and you might be feeling alone right now, but I wanted to make this video to let you know that you're not alone. I've gone through it too. It's important to take the time for you and your partner to be able to grieve what happened and to be able to acknowledge the great loss and allow yourself to be able to feel those emotions. And sharing what happens in your life can also be a really good way to help other people, because you never know what somebody else is going through. But when you open up about what you're going through, you'd be amazed at how many other people can relate to you and also be there for you, and you be there for them. So I'm letting you know that I am here for you. And yeah, my Christmas content is not going to be like this, but I thought it was super important to be able to talk about the not so fun things that can happen at the holidays, because not everybody is having a jolly Christmas, and people are going through stuff, and it's important that you take the time to be able to feel those emotions and not just like mask it over. So if you enjoyed today's video or it resonated with you, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, and turn on the notification bell if you want to get notified when I upload my next video. And remember, do all things with love and kindness, and I'll see you next week. I love you.